All right, so the assignment is you're going to be making a keychain based off of sketches and extruding that into a three-dimensional object. So where do you start with this? How do you go about this? Obviously, let's open up Fusion. Let's get underway with some stuff. All right, get this out of the way. So first things first, what you should always try to do at the beginning, save your project. So either Control, Command, Save, hit the save icon, whatever. Make sure that you've selected the folder. Now, right now, you're going to be saving in your own personal work. I'm going to show you how to bring that over into Fusion 360, or into the shared team once you accept the invites. But for now, example, duck coin. All right, so you have two options here. You can start from sketches, or you can import an image to work from. An image is called a canvas in this case. So you can start from sketches, create a sketch. There you go. You'll have to start by selecting a plane, but hang on a second. I want to start from a sketch. It'll help me out. So move over to the right side. The default button on the toolbar is canvas, but you can go to insert and cycle down to canvas, same deal. Select there. You could bring canvases from other projects or from your computer. So in this case, I'm going to bring in a duck. Now, just the same way of creating a sketch, you have to select what plane you want to work on. In this case, I want to work on the XY plane, the flat plane working down. Select there, and it's going to import the image as it's already defined. Now, you have your toolbar here, or your toolbox that pops up. You have options to work from. You have opacities. You can move it around either numerically or by dragging, or you can also scale it. And these are scale factors. It's not by dimension, it's by factor, meaning that at 1 is 100%. If I want it to be half the size, 50%, I would put in 0.5, because it's 0 to 1 from teeny tiny nothing to current. Above that, it would be 2, twice the size, 5 times the size, so on and so forth. Right now, I'm going to leave it as is. You can also flip these around. Say if this was already a text thing and you wanted to make a stamp, you'd want the text reversed. You can make stamp, so you can do it there. But let's leave it there. Now, the reason I'm not scaling it is because I don't want to scale this object or this image. I want to actually make it a size. I'll show you how to do that. So let's hit OK. Now, you see on your browser tree, now a canvas tab has appeared. Expand that out. Duck. Now, like I said, I want to make this roughly a size. So the general size of this project, if you want to print these, is about 80 millimeters squared, about 3 inches squared. We're going to talk about depth. Really shouldn't be that much, but I intend to make this more of a circular coin. So I'm going to make this a circle, and I think I want to make this about 60 millimeters. Now, that does not refer to the size of the image. I can scale the actual the actual image inside, not the canvas size. So what I'll do is I go to duck on the browser here, right click, calibrate, not edit canvas. That will bring me back to the toolbox that I just had. Calibrate allows you to select 2 points, and I'm going to my view cube, select top, so I can just look straight down here orthogonally. And I want my duck here currently. You know what? Actually, I'll make the duck about 60 millimeters, then I'll make the other thing about 80. So I can select 2 points. I'm going to zoom in to roughly its butt and roughly over here. Currently, now I have a linear dimension. That's 13 millimeters from there to there. I want that to be 60. Type in 60. It expands it all the way up. Hit F6 to resize. Now, from there to there, that's going to be 60 millimeters. So I can work directly off of that. Great. Now I can start my sketch. So if you want to work in perspective, there you go. To begin a sketch, select the Create Sketch tool. Select your working plane. Again, this is the XY plane. Now my toolbar changes. Now I have a bunch of different line types to play with. The main ones you're going to be working with are going to be your lines and your fit point splines. Now, cool thing about Fusion, which is it's really intended to be a variable tool from beginners to advanced users. And the cool thing about Fusion is anytime you mouse over a tool, a pop-up window will appear that will explain what that tool is and how to use it. So it's really helpful. It's really geared toward you learning some CAD software. So if I'm building something out of just lines, opens up that a lot more explanation, creates lines and arcs. Lines are direct lines, and arc is a radial curve based off of that line. But it also tells you the hotkey. You can just press L, and that'll bring up the line tool as well. Your spline, fit point spline, is a way to create a curved line based off of points you have selected. So if I wanted to draw straight lines around this, I can just select somewhere around, and I can keep clicking, and it's going to keep making lines. So this is what I meant by polyline. You don't really need to like commit this to memory. I'm just explaining as I go. A polyline is just a collection of continuous lines. So I can draw stuff around this. There you go. Cool. You hit enter. That'll save that. So now my duck is encased in basic ice. The other set of tools over here are called your constraints. These are ways that you can then add definition to your lines. So the intention is you can free draw something and then add constraints. And what will happen is symbols will appear next to it. So right here, see this little line, this little symbol, and unfortunately they don't expand and shrink with zooming in. But there's a little line of 2 lines and some hatch lines. That's your first one. Horizontal, vertical. What you can do with that is you select your line, select the tool, or select the tool and select the line, and it'll change that line now. I wanted that line to be vertical. Now it's vertical. Say I wanted this line to be horizontal. It's going to assume whatever is closest is what you want. Select that now while this constraint is still active. Now that snaps it to horizontal. So this is what I meant by you can do a lot of the work yourself, but let the program help. Let the program do what it's meant for. Other tools you can do is say you want something, a coincident that actually snaps things together. Tangent is, say I wanted to add a circle. We'll just use the circle tool and plop one out there. Great. If I want to use the circle tool, the tangent is a line at 90 degrees from the curvature of a circle. Select that tool. I select the circle that I want. Select the line. Now, what just happened is it moved the lines over to the circle. That is because this is one of the things that you will run into. The circle I chose is a center diameter circle. That's the default circle. How Fusion works is it based this off of a center point that I selected. It assumed wherever I put that point is where I want that circle to remain, regardless of size, regardless of constraints and snap things that I add to it. It wants that circle to remain right there, locked into those virtual coordinates. If you create a center circle and want to move it later, let me Control Z and there we go. Move that back out. That negated the move from the constraint and everything. Right click on that point. This is one of the other toolboxes that'll appear. This allows you to repeat and easily use more oftenly navigated tools. Also, straight up will be the last tool you used. Now, because I Control Z out of that, it didn't save anything, but it'll also have some relative stuff. What you want to do is delete coincident. That's what it's called, is a coincident that locks it in place. Delete that. Now, when I use the constraint tool, select the circle, snap over. Oh, screw you. It did it anyway. Sometimes it does that. But the main other thing is if I wanted to drag it around, the move tool here, or press M. See, when I selected that, it still selects by the circle, but now I can drag it around. Before I wouldn't have been able to. This is a perfect opportunity also because this is a predetermined line object. You have a couple of different things that come up in what I like to call the gimbal, gumball, whatever you want to talk about. It's a multi-tool center thing. The lines move something orthogonally, again, in one direction. One arrow goes up left and right, the other up and down. The arc tool rotates. You're not, there's no orientation for a circle. It's going to be a circle anyway. But the other tool on there is this square. This allows me to move it, basically pan it in any direction. The major difference there being that the arrow also moves it along in predetermined snap movements. You see that as I drag this along, this little numeric input toolbox pops up. You'll see it's moving it in whole numbers. It's moving it a millimeter at a time. If I use the orbit tool or the pan tool, pre-transform is what's called. We'll just keep with pan for now. You see it's moving in much smaller increments. So this is what I was talking about with snapping along the grid and dragging along the grid, and not. So that's main things for that. So you can move stuff around using the move tool. If it's something you've made from a predetermined center point, usually it'll lock it in place. So let's delete that for now. And maybe what I wanted to do is to create this duck. I want to make a circle around it. So instead, I'll start at the origin point, because this is really how you should start stuff. And then I make a circle around everything. And like I said, we'll make that about 80 millimeters. So that's around the duck. Good. Now, another thing. Why is the circle in black and the lines in blue? Black line defines a defined dimensioned object. In this case, sketches. If I were to just have made this by dragging it out, it stayed blue. I can change the size of that if I say, like, you know what, I just made this a size. I really want to make this something else. There's your dimension tool. That's what I was saying about dimensions. D, you can just press D. Select that tool, select the circle. Now you see this same defining line that's on the defined sketch. Now it's kind of floating in space there. Select there. Now I've got this 48 and yada, yada, yada so much. Maybe I just wanted that to be 50. Now it's going to resize it. Now that should have locked it in blue, or it should have locked it in place, but it didn't. Probably because it's just kind of floating in space. I don't know why that didn't lock in. That should have locked it in blue and black. Anyway, that's how you can do that. All right. So those are your basic lines, your line tools. You can create squares or rectangles the same way. You have your default right here is a 2-point square. Means that you select one point, select the opposing diagonal other point. You see the constraint symbols come up. My horizontal vertical symbols are there because it's a square, or in this case, a rectangle. I can resize it by selecting the dimension tool, drag that up. All right, that was 61 and yada, yada. Let's say that should have been 55. Now, what happened is, let me do something. Let's do something a little more drastic. Let's say 33. All right, just because 3. Did you see how it resized back to backwards instead of like snapping, like just uniformly squishing itself? That is an example of parametric modeling, in that the original point was that first selection point, and the second point is the other defining feature. As I resized it, it snapped back dependent on that original point. Just one of the things that you'll come to recognize. Again, I can always drag out the other side. Let's say that was 25. There we go. All right. Now I can redistribute these. Just so you know, if I were to print this or anything like that, these reference lines of 25 and 33, those are just representational. That's not like that's actually going to print. All right. Let's start actually trying to copy this duck, or you could make your own symbol, whatever. This is where fit point splines come in. Now, again, you can drop down and see there's multiple other things. There's like a center point rectangle. It does the same thing as the 2-point rectangle, just more like the center point circle. There's 2-point circles that it's a circle that works the same as the 2-point rectangle. So I encourage you just to play around with some of these. Just throw stuff on the sketch page. There you go. But once you kind of play around a little bit and decide what you really want to work with, in this case, I want to draw something that is my sketch that is much more like a actual duck here. So first off, I select one of these lines, I want to get rid of my kind of little like weird geometrical thing. Select one, and it'll select just the one line I had. If I double click on the line, now it selects the whole thing. I can delete it. There we go. Now then, the other thing I want to do is draw this out. So to help me explain some stuff differently, let me delete this circle around this. Let me start building out this fit point spline. So this draws a curved line. This tool draws a curved line, as it says, based off of points that I select. You can move those points around. You can stretch them around. That's all fine. If you want a smoother line, use less points. If you want a more jagged line, use more points. And you can always move them around later. So let me zoom in, and you know what? Good starting point is right here at the back of the neck. So as I draw the first 2 points, you'll see it's a straight line because a straight line is going to be between 2 points. As soon as I start selecting the next, you see how much it starts to curve. And I can just work my way around. Yeah, it's going to be a little knobbly at first. That's okay. Let me finish that, hit enter. Now what happens is all of those points have these weird tangential green lines on them. These are called your handlebars. You can select, click and drag on the point itself to move it around. Select the handlebar, and that, literally like a handlebar, twists the curvature. So as I select that, I drag it around. You can see how it morphs wildly, but small movements help me fine-tune the shape. I can drag the handlebar out to expand the range of the effect of that twist, or I can just make a really mutant duck. That's up to you. Let me Control Z that. That was close-ish to what I wanted to do. All right, that's one section. I can continue this by adding more lines. I can just freeform it, or I can keep going from the same thing, start at the same point, snap of that, drawing up and around, and just work my way around. So this whole project is very much just an experiment in playing with lines, seeing how they work, that sort. That's actually pretty decent. We'll go with that. If you're copying an image, I'm not expecting it to be an exact duplicate. You're getting as close as you need to get to finish your drawing out. The eyes, I can either do freeform, or you see there's another object tool, an ellipse. I'll use that. That seems decent. It's not going to make it exact, but it'll get close. An ellipse works by selecting the center, dragging outward to create one dimension, and then 90 degrees the other way to create the other dimension. Hit enter. Now, inside of that ellipse, you'll see these cross lines that are dotted in orange. That is your construction line. So as I'm drawing all of this, what if I want just like some reference lines, or you're doing whatever? On your toolbox, the first option is construction and center line. We're going to deal with construction line. What you can do is either draw a new one, or you can toggle this by, what if I just wanted this duck head as a reference line? I was going to do other stuff to it. Select the line, go over here, select construction. Now it changes it to a dotted line. Now that's a reference line. I can select it again, go back and change construction, or press the hotkey X. That's what toggles it back and forth. So those are really handy for making like reference lines, stuff like that. The other thing is, as I'm drawing this, and let me hide the canvas because it'll make a little more sense. Right now, there's a weird difference between the circle, the rectangle, and this open line. And I call it an open line for a reason. A closed sketch, a closed line, will be highlighted blue in Fusion. A closed line can be extruded as a solid body later. An open line, an open sketch, cannot. There's ways, but for what we're doing, it cannot. So to close that, I need to, well, I can just draw between these 2 points. I could drag that, snap it together. Now that highlighted is blue. Now it's a closed line. But I want to not do that. I want to create the bill. You can see the eye is a closed line because it's highlighted blue. So I could use that. to create the eyes, and there'll be separate segments. So let me make another ellipse over here, something to that effect, up and down, something to that effect, close enough. All right. So I'll make the bill out with, and I'll just do this kind of quickly with this. Oh, geez, didn't realize the time. So let me just knock this out real quick. As you can see, you can get wild curves that might not be what you want. Let me hit enter, and this section I'm going to delete. You delete one point and it snaps back to the previous point because I wasn't getting a sharp enough turn there. I can go back and add to it. I can make the bill here. Again, back and forth does weird things. You play around with this as you need. If you try to make a sharp point, finish, and then start again. You see how the two line, instead of making a big curve, starting and stopping made that sharp curve there. Zooming into right there. There you go. All right. Now something else real quick here. This is not a closed line yet. This is not a closed sketch. I need to add that section up here. Finish up, keep it going on that. And dip up, hit enter. Now it closed. You see when I highlight over, also, it actually shows as a closed thing. This floating line could be something else. And what I mean by something else is something similar to like the inside here. One other quick tool I want to show you about. Now you can delete stuff. Actually two here, sorry. To trim, say like I made a line, or maybe this line went too far, something like that. You can trim tools by, say, like, let's see here. I got it. I know. Actually, to do the insets here, let's reverse that. What if I want to just make a smaller version of something that I've already done? So the tool here is called an offset tool. What that does is it creates a second, smaller or larger, depending on where you're going, scaled copy of the original. So I select that line. Now you can see it makes on one side much larger. If I drag the other way, much smaller. Positive and negative dimensions. If you want to do this numerically, that looks like it's like 0.6. So I could, if I want this to be like a whole number, I can put in negative 0.6. Negative is inside the line. That's what I can use to start making the circle for the eyes there. I know it's not exact, but close enough. But what if I want to make this little notch in? Well, I can use a line and just kind of create an open-ended triangle. That's not a closed thing. It's just those two lines. But as I mouse over, you can see it's showing me a reference of what that now closed shape is. Also, it's got that little notch cut in. But what if I want to actually trim that away? This is what I use the trim tool. The trim tool it's deleting essentially, but anytime, like it says here, anytime there's a overlap of something, Fusion will assume that that overlapping line is a stopping point for your trim. So what I mean by that is, so this line, this little open triangle overlaps both ellipses. I can use the trim tool to trim away just that notch there. And now these outer sections, and get rid of the original things there, finish up, hit enter. But because those parts were overlapping, now I can trim away, and it based it off of everything that was overlapping. Sometimes it's kind of irritating because it will react to everything. And that's one of the main things about Fusion. If it is visible, it'll work on that. It'll base any actions that are based around like overlapping stuff. It'll base it on that. So that's the offset tool. That's the trim tool. And okay, we'll call this good enough for now. Finish sketch. Now I'm going to delete. I don't need to worry about these sketches over here, any of that kind of stuff. From here, this isn't the finished thing. Oh, I deleted my, apparently I also deleted a section of that. All right, if you need to go back into it, like I said, double click or right click on the timeline thing. It'll reactivate the sketch environment. Let me have the duck canvas back up, and let me close up that sketch. Oopsie daisy. Sorry there, ducky. Okay, Now I can finish that. There we go. All right, that is a very rough drawing, but it works. Where we're going to go from here is we're going to use the extrude tool. I'm not expecting you to get to this. The main goal is to just work on the sketches themselves for next class. We're going to use this extrude tool, and it works only on a closed sketch. And you can see that because I have different sections, it only activates on, just like trim, what you are currently working on, what is currently a closed section. So if I just select that, and I either do this numerically or by dragging, you can see this goes up or down, or if you select different ones, it'll do it symmetrically. Let's just go up for now. Select OK. Your sketch disappears because it assumes you're done with the sketch, but now I have a three-dimensional extruded body of that part. Now, let me reactivate, or let me unhide that sketch. You could do multiple extrusions on multiple layers. So like here, I'll do 1 millimeter. And you have in your toolbox pop up, one of the operations is join. Again, we're going to go through all this. I just want to briefly go through this just to show you those steps. I don't have to join it right now. I'll just leave it as a new body for now. I can join it later. Because they're different levels, you'll get different heights out of this. But one quick thing here. Say like the eyeball. I want to extrude that eye, the little pupil, and let's go up to 6. I don't know. Something that's higher. Oh, that's way too high. I don't know. 4. That's slightly more reasonable. Select OK. All right. If I wanted to 3D print this, and this is the goal for this project, I cannot have things floating in space. And the reason I was going to draw that circle around it is going to make this kind of like an emblem. But this is where you would want to make a second sketch, because I'm keeping the duck sketch on one. Let me rename it as such. Then I can start a new sketch if it helps. And sometimes you have to hide the bodies. Yes, that's going to be a term we're going to keep using, and it's never not funny to me, but you do you. Your sketches are stay there because they're currently unhidden. I want to select the same plane that I was working on before. And if I need to, I'll hide the duck sketch, but it's there. Now I'm going to make a center point circle. Just make it large enough so it's out there. This is where that 80 came in. Select OK. Finish that. Oh, not the canvas. I want to unhide the bodies. Now, if I do an extrusion of that whole circle, and I can hide the body again of just that. Oh, those are all 3 different ones. And that first sketch, selecting just that. And I'll go negative this time. I'll go downward. So like -2. That's plenty. Select OK. Now when I unhide these, now there's basically a backing to this. And now that would be able to all join together. And I will use the combine tool to just select all the things, start with one, and then it'll let me select all the other ones. Shrinks all those bodies into one. There we go. Again, I'm going to go through this in much more detail next class. I didn't want to overload everybody, but I did want to quickly just briefly go over the steps that will be involved in this. The main thing I want you to do is focus on not the bodies. Just start your sketch. However you want to work with that, whatever you want to do. You want to make this free form, fine. You want to start from a canvas or a pre-made image, import a canvas. You can start from that and trace that. However you want to approach this is up to you. Remember that the main goal is, and I will alter the assignment there just to say roughly 80 millimeters square. So, all right. So brief introduction. We will discuss this in much more detail next class, but I just wanted to make sure to go over how you could go about getting underway. We'll also talk about text next class too. All right. So get started. Good luck with it, and we'll develop it more.